Greetings everyone, this is Lodrik and this is the game War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. This is a match against Dojo. Just in these days we have a little breakdown or slowdown of the match. I miss feedback from Dojo, not sure what happened in the last 3-4 weeks. And I have no new turns and Dojo also not uploading much, so I want to use this opportunity to maybe close the gap of the still missing turns we have at the beginning of the game. I will upload maybe in the next 1 or 2 days, hopefully at least some, maybe all of the missing turns of the match with Dojo. At the end of December, beginning of January time frame. So let's dive in today. We check now turn number 9, means 23rd and 24th, the day before Christmas and Christmas of 1941. This is now way many months ago, so I'm not more sure what happened at that time. But we can see that the Malayan campaign is still not over. Yeah. In the first weeks of the game, as a Japanese player, it is I don't know if I would say it is maybe important, or it will give a benefit for the Japanese player in the long run, if it's possible to disturb and intercept this ally shipping early on in and around Java, because the ally player will try to bring out as much of the supplies or oil or fuel and resources out of this Dutch bases, or at least he will try maybe to save his cargo ships and try to form up a line of defense. And if the Japanese player can use the surface fleet to intercept this and bring chaos, that the allied player not even have a chance to really create something bigger, and always must fear that every shipping can be intercepted. There's is a tactic normally I would suggest for every Japanese player. Yeah, but now in December, operating the surface surface Japanese Navy units around Java have always the risk of airstrikes, because it's normally not possible to conquer the bases nearby early on and cover with own fighter forces your navy units. So there is a risk if you operate your navy units too close to Batavia or Surabaya. Even if the Dutch bomber or airstrike or air force is maybe not the best trained, allied player can maybe with enough skills, and maybe if they use the political points, I'm not sure if they maybe can get some torpedo bombers to Surabaya, and then it's really a little risky to operate here around. But now with Dojo, it was successful. This was a risky pushing tactic for me, but here's a Japanese smaller, or at least a Japanese submarine intercepted a small light cargo ship here somewhere near Hawaii, and they battled it out each other. And the submarine commander more or less they use the deck gun here. Because these light cargo ships often have only heavy machine guns, and this is nothing really can hurt a ship. And you can sink cargo ships with a deck gun, but this is not more World War One. In World War One, this was more typical, but in World War Two, this is very special event that the submarine tries this, because most of the cargo ships they have at least something like a 40mm gun, heavy flak gun or something like this, and this is already too dangerous for a submarine. So one allied ship, I think the light cargo ship, just go down. Yeah. There's the next encounter, and here I often also use still this pre-game setup task forces. Often these task forces are already by game design and game setup created. I don't have so much time to really reorganize these task forces. I let them more or less run now around, and if they're out of ammunition and out of fuel, I bring them back to port, and then I will create normally task forces are more my fighting style. But to hunt down here some local minesweepers or cargo ships, this is all enough and fine. Why not? I mean, only if there are only 1-point ships, but at least there are some ships. And it gives always pressure to the player. And this is now the same task force. And here we intercept some really big convoy or cargo unit of Dojo. This looks like a tanker, and these are big cargo ships, but they have at least one destroyer for escort. So they are troop transport ships. But we running. This is more or less the maximum range of the destroyer guns. I think the destroyer guns have a range of maybe 16 or 18,000 yards. So we're fighting here at 15,000 yards. The Japanese torpedoes, they have a range of I think 21,000 yards, but higher distance is still less likely to create a torpedo hit. Unluckily, it is not possible to really give any command if you want to throw your torpedoes at the maximum range or at a standard range or come close to before you strike with your torpedoes, because the numbers of torpedoes a warship can carry is really limited. and is 100% only by the commander decision. So you have the task force commander. This is most of the time a vice admiral. He can normally give overall command of the units, but then you also have a captain. And there you have something like navy skills, how aggressive he is, and this will, I think, always be part of the calculation if a ship will launch torpedoes at what distance, if you try to what tactic you follow. It's maybe, but I really don't know this 100%. But I would suggest if the ship will use torpedoes, yes or no, it's related by the captain. If you use guns or torpedoes, something like this. But if the task force is engaging or holding the distance or try to disengage, is always from the task force commander, from the vice admiral. Because there is some limitation in this game. This distance is always a task force distance. So all of my ships are now 7,000 yards away from Dojo's task force. Of course, in reality, every ship is unique, and the distance of a ship to a ship is separately. So, but in this game, you only have task force distance to each other. Only because this is of course a game calculation stuff to keep it a little more simple. There's already so many calculations, so many rules in this game that at some point the game designers maybe say, okay, let's try to not simulate the war. It's still a war game. But anyway, you can see that the Japanese destroyers, of course, they have more or less a light match here. The only one really can strike back is here the destroyer. The PG is okay for anti-submarine warfare, more maybe, but not really for the surface engagement. And the cargo ships and the troop transport ships and the tankers, they have also only light guns, flag guns. It's all okay for them. It's a minimum defense power. It's enough to really force a submarine to dive, so that the submarine cannot use the deck gun. That is okay. But for anything else, it's of course too little. Yeah, so we create here more and more hits on this task force. I think this will normally now go down. Yeah. So the destroyer is already dead, and this is for me one of the most important stuff, to not maybe sink enemy cargo ships, but at least damage them. And because if they are damaged, they are slow on speed, and then you cannot really use them more, then they are blocked in port. And more importantly is the enemy destroyer is dead. And even if it's only a destroyer, if the numbers of destroyers the Allies have early in the game is limited, let's say this. Especially if it's the British destroyers. So the American destroyers, they have maybe many destroyers, but they are often more or less interwar standard or late World War I standard. And they are limited in everything. The British destroyers are already much better equipped. Anyway, so we see here now a total victory of the Japanese Navy, and intercept here this enemy cargo unit. This is again our battleships picking up some 2 light cargo ships, so this is a one-sided cleanup operation. Yeah, that was easy. This is our task force, still the same task force from just now before. And this is, I think, this PG. Oh no, it was an AMC, so a local minesweeper 1-point ship. Yeah. So this is for my Japanese. I mean, I capture here the north pass of Borneo, and I bring here some aviation support guys to Singkawang, and I use now here these are Zero fighters, but they are land-based or blend-based trained pilots. You can operate them from a carrier, but they are not trained for this, so they have some. They will have more operational losses like this. So this unit I normally use from land bases, but because the Zeros have this long range, you can send them everywhere where you like. And in this case, I sent them more or less to sweep Singapore, to make sure that there are no enemy fighters more in Singapore. Simply to allow me to dominate the skies of Singapore, and then I can choose to use my navy bombers, torpedo bombers, to operate in this area. Because the Japanese torpedo bombers Nell and Bettys, they have long range, they are skillful to hunt enemy shipping, but they are very vulnerable against enemy fighters. And even if they are only Buffalo fighters, they will not stand a chance if they get intercepted. But but now it is more or less the opposite. My Zeros let the British Air Force have no chance, because my Zeros are simply far too agile, fast, skillful. It's nearly impossible for Dojo now create here much of hits on my side. This is a very one-sided battle normally. Yeah. So my Zeros can dominate the skies of Singapore now. Maybe kill some Buffaloes or Blenheims. Oh. In this stage of the war, Dojo still try to maybe fight back with his Chinese Air Force in China. But I use here also my Zeros. The Japanese, I think they have 2 Zero squadrons, land-based, at the beginning of the war. Each fighter or squadron is, I think, or fighter wing, or how you want to call it, it's around 45 airframes. And you have normally, I think, one for China, Malaya, and the other one is normally fighting in the Philippines. Okay. This is only this Russian airplane. They have no chance against Zeros. Normally, the Japanese Army Air Force have this old Ki-27 fighters. And the Ki-27 fighters are normally at the same level like this I-15, I-16. But I don't really like to use them. I really only use Oscar 1C and Zero fighters. And everything else is for me only a training airplane. But the Japanese simply start with two less of these first class fighters like Zeros. So there's only two options. You can normally try to push the Japanese industry very fast and increase the production of Zeros and Oscars, or you choose the air battles wisely and maybe not attack everywhere at the same time, but every air battle you pick, you try to something like here now you crash the enemy one by one, day by day. It's maybe a little more slow progress, but you don't must push too much the industry, and you can save resources. Different tactics. I'm not sure what is really best. I would still say if you have a production capacity of around 80 airframes per month for the Zero and for the Oscar 1C, it's maybe enough. I would not go over 90. But really, this is up to how aggressive the Japanese want play and how the allies player react to this. So this is not wrong or right. This is a tactical decision. But at least 60 per month, I think, is the minimum production for Oscar 1C, and Zero is a must-have for the Japanese. Only to keep up with the losses. This is only this support bomb strikes. Everywhere a little to slow down enemy units. Yeah. So one of my first military operation was to clean up all these Chinese forces here in the north near Peking, and clean up these railroads, that I can later on move my units in strategic move on the rail. This railroad is normally not so important because you can still move everything around, but I still follow a more step-by-step operation in my war. I first try to clean up everything behind my lines, and then I take the big cities one by one. You can normally play this game much more aggressive and still ignore all these Chinese forces behind your line and try immediately go for the big cities. And then later on try to clean up the Chinese armies. This is also possible. It only gets dangerous if you try everything at the same time. If you try that, you really must know what you are doing, and you must have a feeling for how strong is your units and how strong are the enemy units. So if you have maybe experience and play these games maybe 3-4 times, then you know how strong the Chinese forces in which area are at the beginning of the war. Latest after 1 month, the Allied player can normally shift units around, and so you will never know how strong they are if you don't have intelligence reports. And yeah, recon airplanes making pictures and tell you how many units are there. So and I think at this stage of the war, Dojo was still not clear what he want to do with his Chinese forces. Sometimes he tried to escape, sometimes he tried to hold the ground, and I'm not so sure if Dojo had an overall strategic plan for his operation in China. I think he played China very lightly. And he maybe not he not feared the Japanese army so much, and first later on he realized that maybe he made some mistakes and lost time to create a strong points of defense, strongholds that he can always fall back, and will cost me time and manpower to storm them. So he's more or less everywhere a little, but nowhere really strong. And I play the game more or less like if I push strong, and if I don't push, I only keep what is the minimum power. So I always try to focus my effort. But like I said many times before, you can have your own tactic and strategy, but you must always adjust normally your tactics and your play style to how your enemy is reacting. You can try to dominate the game and let the enemy always react to you, but this not always will work. So even if you think your tactics are perfectly, but if the enemy can counter them with skillful knowledge or experience or whatever, then maybe you have to change your own tactics, even if they are normally working before very well. So be flexible. I think this is one of the most important stuff in war, that you never think that you are perfect and you don't must change more. Yeah, so I can run now here my Betty and Nell bombers very close to Singapore, because my Zeros already get rid of all the cap fighters from Singapore before. And normally if they are now enough or strong enough, or still some British cap fighters in Singapore, they would normally intercept my bombers, and then I will have really higher losses. But in this case I only have some flak damage. Here I still use this Key 27B, the nade, but only for escort, not really more for sweeping. Okay, this is now Dojo's Counter-Strike. Like I said just before, my Navy surface units have here no air cover, so it's a little dangerous. The only problem for Dojo is that this Dutch Air Force is really a paper dragon, you can say. They have numbers, but they have no skills. So I think there are different tactics how to maybe improve this Dutch Air Force fast. Maybe try not even to engage all shipping here, only let them train for maybe 1 month. So that maybe the Dutch Air Force is maybe ready in January or latest end of January to maybe intercept shipping. But the Dojo more or less try, he say, I mean, at least this units coming here and try to bomb my ships, but fail. And maybe his range is normal, I mean, his altitude is 6,000, so this is okay, because my light flag only can go up to 4,000. So he can even go down to 5,000 feet if he want, and still not must fear to get attacked by my flag, my light flag. Of course, these ships, these are battleships. They also have heavy flag, and heavy flag will go up to 18,000, 19,000 feet. Okay, next try. But nothing. Even the Japanese flag is not so good, but sometimes even Japanese can kill with flag some airplanes. And again and again. And of course, this is, I think, related that all these air strikes are coming this 1 by 1 is maybe related to how the organization is. Who is the commander of the unit, and if there's enough aviation support. This I really don't know. But it will normally always be more effective if one strike is coming together and not 1 by 1, 1 by 1. Yeah, at least they try, but they fail. So it is not that Dojo never try anything. At the beginning, the first weeks of the game, he maybe even really tried to fight me, but with not really much success. So, and then later on, he was always maybe too desperate and had too much respect and fear, so that he slowed down and reduced his effort to really stand the tide, and maybe only say, okay, let's wait for reinforcements. The time is always for the Allies. In May, June 42, more equipment will arrive. So this is the first Japanese army. So this is really the beginning of my creation of armies, and we're fighting here in the rough mountains east of Xi'an. And here is I think this Chinese army is already beaten once before, or maybe already twice, and so they will not really hold the ground more. So I drive this first unit, this army, I drive more or less immediately from the start of the war in direction of Xi'an. And normally latest at that point, you can see that I have only disabled units, and Dojo have many destroyed units. And I also use something like how you call this? Pursuit. You can tell, normally I use this always for tank units. I don't know if I have tank units, maybe at the end of the war. Yeah, armor card units is here. I think the armor card unit more or less, they don't really take part of the battle. They're waiting that the battle is won and then immediately can move. So we always give pressure on the units. So I'm already in the hex with Dojo. And this means more or less, I think they must fear that I attack them again and again and again. Here this is a cleanup operation in the north. This is my Mongolian army. But there is, you can see that it's not that this is an easy victory, it's just so. Yes, of course, a tactical victory, but still the Chinese units at least can hold the ground. For how long is another question. And now it's 23rd of December, more or less. I cut completely Singapore of Malaya. I mean, I already cut before all communication and transportation. So, but now we have the town. You have Johor Bahru. So Singapore is isolated now. Dojo not even try to fight this town. This is a cleanup operation. So Dojo's forces jumping to the jungle, and they are also at the breaking point. So far everything works like I planned. Okay. So again, it took one of my submarines. This is here near to Pago Pago, or this is maybe already the base of Pago Pago. And this is only a small cargo ship, so nothing really important. But of course, this will give again fear to the allied player. In this case, of his Dojo, that if everywhere are my submarines and his cargo ships are nowhere safe, then he have the and then we also get here a tanker. The small cargo ship I really not care, but I mean this is not a big tanker, but at least there's a tanker. But the attack on the tanker failed. But this will, I mean, if there are submarines, then normally you're forced to have escort, destroyers, something like this. Again, small cargo ship, and this with a double figure is normally always a bigger one. So you can also see that these submarines are bigger, so they have a 14 centimeter gun normally. So this kind of shells will produce much more damage, but no ammunition. And the captain decided torpedoes are too expensive to hit this kind of cargo ships. I don't know why, because normally, even if it's a 1-point cargo ship, Okay, and here we have a bigger engagement. Luckily, we have here 2 Japanese battleships at the core. Dojo have here troop transport ships. This is maybe a light cruiser, and these are 2 destroyers. So Dojo have protection for his units, but of course this is never enough to stop a battleship. And we're fighting here at night time at 8,000 yards, so this is more or less, I think, more or less perfect for Japanese surface fleets now at this stage of the war. Later on, latest in 43, this will maybe change, because in 43 most of the allied ships have already surface radar, and then the allies will be in advance if you fight at night, because the Japanese radar in 43 is just so. So now we have our heavy artillery. Normally I think will make here easy picking. The only thing what is dangerous and what always can happen is if these destroyers or light cruisers from British or Australian, whatever, if they have torpedoes and they can create a lucky hit on my battleships or destroyers. But in this case we landing now with our torpedoes hits on Dojo's troop transport ships. Well, with 36 centimeter guns, this is of course a lot of firepower. Still, I would prefer that my units will normally always try to focus first on enemy military units before they try to hunt down cargo ships. But this is again, I think, calculation of the game. Only you cannot influence this, or it's only which captain you have and what is the task force commander. And normally for carriers and for battleships I will always change the captains first. I think carrier I change first, all captains, to make sure that the carrier need normally a captain with a good air skill. Then I will start changing the captains for all the battleships to make sure that the captains all have a good navy skill. And the next in line are normally heavy cruisers. For heavy cruisers are like battleships, they normally need only navy skill very high. For the rest of my units I not really change the captains. You can do this. It costs you 3 points or 5 points, I think. It's a one-time investment. You don't really change the captains again after this. The only thing what you have to change maybe again and again is task force commanders. You can always, if you create a new task force, you can make the auto picking, and the auto picking is more or less for free. So if you create a new task force, you say pick me admiral for free. But the game often choose just so admirals. There are normally often better choices, but if you want the better choices, then you have to pay. In this task force admirals, so once you dispense this task force, the admiral will go back to the pool, and then you have to pay again for this. Yeah, this is a very one-sided battle now. Again, we land the heavy shell hits on the cargo ships. So the destroyers more or less fighting the enemy destroyers, and my battleships are getting rid of the cargo ships. You also can see that these destroyers, they have only these 12 centimeter guns. So these are the old destroyer types. More or less there was a change of these, or there's normally a break of Japanese destroyer design. There's the Fubuki Destroyers. They are the first one with 12.7 centimeter guns. This 12, and they are larger, bigger. They often come to 1,500, 2,000 tons. And all these 12 centimeter guns destroys, they often only 1,000 tons or 1,500 tons. So this is maybe more or less If you have destroyers with 12 centimeter guns, they are the late First World War designs. And Fubuki is something like mid of 20s, beginning of 30s. There are 3 different subclasses. So most of these 12 centimeter gun destroyers you can later change to escort ships. And escort ships have the main purpose for, they are good for anti-submarine and they are good for anti-aircraft. But they have very limited power for surface engagement. That is why they are escort. They're escorting cargo ships, tankers, something like this. And then you have this better Fubuki and newest type of destroyers. They really are frontline fighters. They're escorting battleships, carriers, and everything. And they try to engage the enemy. I think this is now close the end. Yeah. It was not enough to completely destroy the Allied task forces, but at least they have heavy damage, or at least some damage. Some are already sunk, and my task force get nearly no hit. But there's no, looks like there's no enemy units on, loaded on. So these are all empty troop transport ships. Unluckily. Okay, my submarine try again, and this time we will create a torpedo.
Untitled Thank you.